What if I were to tell you that procrastination could be your biggest asset? It's true, and I have the proof. So stick around to find out why. And if you stick around to the end, I've got tips and tricks to help you manage your procrastination. So let's get started. Procrastination is the act of delaying your tasks, even though you're aware of the consequences. For most people, this looks like putting off tasks that are boring or unpleasant in favor of more enjoyable tasks. But not us ADHDers. We can procrastinate on even our favorite activities. But we're not lazy. Procrastination can be driven by all sorts of things, like a fear of failure, perfectionism, overwhelm, disconnection with your future self, or even a fear of success. And for ADHDers, you can add task paralysis to that list. No matter the reason, procrastination can be incredibly self-defeating. You're getting in your own way, and if you do this on a regular basis, it's hard not to feel defeated. And who are you going to blame other than yourself? Now, I normally do these videos starting with the cons and making my way to the pros, but since this video is about procrastination, I'm going to start with the pros. It just feels right. The first pro is letting ideas simmer for a while can help them develop. It's like a stew. The longer you let it simmer, the more flavorful it's going to get. The neurotypical advice to start before you're ready can backfire spectacularly for ADHDers, because not being prepared can lead to a level of overwhelm that neurotypicals rarely experience. Our brains are designed to notice more, so it's okay to take that extra time you need to process that extra information. Procrastination, especially for ADHDers, can be caused by not knowing what the next step should be. If this is the case, it makes sense to slow down and reevaluate instead of forcing yourself to take action and then beating yourself up when either your efforts are subpar or you can't even convince yourself to start. The second pro is that ADHDers often do better under stress because that added pressure can release extra dopamine. And that allows our brain to function at maximum capacity. And when our brain is working at maximum capacity, it's far easier for ADHDers to focus on the task at hand. Sometimes waiting until the last minute can produce our best work. People tend to use the time they have. So if they give themselves 2 weeks, it'll take 2 weeks. If they give themselves 2 days, it will take only 2 days. But only an ADHDer can wait into the very last minute and still pull off a miracle. And if you have a story like that, I would really love to hear it, so put it in the comments. The third pro is on every list, and that's creativity. Because procrastination is the easiest way to avoid using your first idea. And chances are, if it's your first idea, it's a lot of people's first idea. Putting off starting can lead to better, more interesting, more original ideas. We have really strong instincts. So are you procrastinating for procrastination's sake? Or are you waiting to be inspired? Why waste time on bad ideas when you can just wait a little longer until better ones come along? Of course, in doing that, you do run the risk of simply running out of time altogether. Missed deadlines is the worst part of the procrastination cons. Whether you're waiting around for better ideas or that stress-induced dopamine boost, you run the risk of passing over that threshold into the impossible, which is con number 2, task paralysis. The ADHD brain struggles to communicate with itself. That means that the part of your brain that does all the planning doesn't always talk to the part of your brain that does the doing. You can see why this can be a problem when it comes to procrastination. You know this feeling if you've ever been stuck in a scrolling cycle on your couch unable to convince yourself to get up and do the things you need to do, all the while truly screaming at yourself to get up and do it. And if you're wondering what the difference is between task paralysis and just laziness, lazy people don't hate themselves for being lazy. They don't ask themselves, what is wrong with me? And they don't get overwhelmed with their lack of productivity the way that we do. Which brings us to our next con, the stress and anxiety that procrastination can cause us. Not doing can cause just as much stress as doing too much for an ADHDer. The mental pressure that we put on ourselves can be truly exhausting, even when we're not moving. And this sort of pressure can lead to depression and even anxiety disorders completely separate from our ADHD. So what can we do about it? Well, it turns out quite a bit, actually. So let's get into some tips and tricks. Tip number 1 is set pre-deadlines. Trick your brain into getting things done earlier with fake deadlines. You set them days or weeks before the actual deadline so that you have that bit of extra time. And this can help you harness that sense of urgency that you need in order to produce your dopamine. For some people, this can happen entirely internally. You just tell yourself that the deadline is a week before it actually is, and you can follow through on that. For others, myself included, that is entirely impossible. If you laugh in the face of your own goals and decisions, you may need to get help with this one. For instance, if you have a paper due in 3 weeks, ask your professor to meet you after that first week to go over your outline. Or get a friend to look over your paper a week before it's actually due. Bonus points if you get them to call you up and stress you out about it just to keep you motivated. Tip number 2 is body doubling. This tip can be used for lots of different productivity obstacles. The idea is that having someone in the room with you makes it easier to start and finish projects, especially if the task is really boring or tedious. Having companionship can really coax you into action. And once you get into action, your brain would much rather finish the task than transition into another activity. Which brings us to our next tip. Breaking your tasks into bite-sized pieces can drastically reduce the amount of overwhelm you feel when starting a new project. Remember, your brain is designed to take in more information. So things like dishes can feel overwhelming because each individual dish feels like its own task. So accept it as such. Tell yourself that you only have to do one dish because that's one task. Chances are your brain's going to want to complete that task, and all of a sudden your dishes are all done and your overwhelm has completely dissipated. Tip number 4 is to do the fun stuff first. There's a book out there called something like Eat the Big Frog First. It suggests that you start your day with the biggest, most unpleasant task so that every task afterwards feels easier. This is definitely neurotypical advice. Trying to eat the big frog first is a great way for me to get nothing done. I would spend the entire day avoiding the big task while simultaneously refusing to move on to any other task until that first one was done. ADHDers are far better off smothering that frog with chocolate. For instance, if you have an essay to write, give yourself a piece of chocolate after every paragraph or every page. It doesn't need to be chocolate. Any treat will do. It's not about celebrating the win. It's about giving yourself small rewards for small amounts of effort. ADHDers don't experience achievement the same way as neurotypicals. Generally, we achieve and then we just need to move on to the next thing without being able to take that moment and really appreciate the amount of work we put into it in the first place. That's why you need those small rewards to remind yourself to keep going. And honestly, they are the secret to getting all the things done. And as always, please cut yourself some slack. Procrastination has a cause, and it's not because you suck or that you don't care. So stop telling yourself that and focus on the ways that you can make it work for you. Thanks for watching. I'm Kristen. This is Creatively Divergent. I make videos once a week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week. Bye.